Hi everyone and welcome back to the Rewatch. Right off the bat, I want to issue a full spoiler warning for Spider-Man No Way Home. It's been over a week since the film came out, so you've all had the opportunity to go and see the film. But here it is, the spoiler warning, because I am going to be spoiling the film straight away. So if you've subscribed to this YouTube channel, you're likely to have subscribed due to one of our Spider-Man videos. A lot of you have subscribed because of the video I did over a year ago about why I believe the Amazing Spider-Man films are underrated. And now TASM fans can rejoice because the King has returned. And I'm going to talk about it with you all today. And I just want to issue an apology in advance because I'm not going to spend too much time editing this video. I just want to get my thoughts out there for you all very quickly. So let's talk about Andrew Garfield's appearance in No Way Home and also the TASM villains Electro and Lizard that also made an appearance. And so this isn't going to be a review of the film, it's just going to be my thoughts on all the TASM related content. Now, as much as I love TASM 2, Electro as a character was by far the worst part of the film. But in No Way Home, Max Dillon gets a bit of a makeover. Not only is his hairline and teeth fixed, but he now has yellow lightning. And now I don't believe this was actually explained in universe, but when we first see Electro, we see his blue form, and we also get a hint of that TASM 2 Electro theme by Hans Zimmer, which is fantastic. However, unfortunately, we only hear that score for a few seconds, and the theme isn't used at all from that point onwards, which I believe is just a major missed opportunity. But we'll get to a bit more of the score later on, because I've got some more thoughts on that. Electro's character overall, it doesn't really feel like the Max Dillon that we know from TASM 2, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think Jamie Foxx wanted to inject a bit more of his own personality into the character, and in No Way Home, Electro is one of the villains that is bad from the start, and is just continuously evil throughout the film. And look, honestly, I thought Jamie Foxx did a pretty great job. So that sort of wraps up my views on Electro's character. Let's move on to the Lizard. Now, honestly, I wasn't expecting much from the Lizard in this movie, and the character certainly did not exceed my expectations. Unfortunately, it seems like Marvel and Sony didn't want to get Rhys Ifans back for the character, and just like they did with Sandman, the Lizard seems to be trapped in his CGI full lizard form. And we get no explanation for this, but supposedly, in the TASM universe, Dr. Kurt Connors transformed himself back into the Lizard before being transported to this universe. And so Rhys Ifans did do the voiceover for the Lizard, and he does sound just like he did in TASM 1, which was great. Now, once the Lizard is cured in the third act battle, John Watts has simply taken old footage from TASM 1 instead of just filming new material with Rhys Ifans. And this was just a big mistake in my opinion, as Rhys looks the same age he did in 2012, because obviously it's a clip from 2012, when he should really look like how he does in 2021, because time has passed. And this same thing applies to the Sandman, and it's one of those plot points in the film that sort of falls apart on further inspection. A lot of plot points occur just from Doctor Strange's spell alone. But regardless, let's move on to the thing that TASM fans were hoping for and looking forward to, and that is Andrew Garfield's return as Spider-Man. So I'm going to start off with Andrew Garfield's performance in this film. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Andrew Garfield is by far the most talented actor to ever play Spider-Man. And it looks like all it took was to put him alongside the other two Spider-Men for people to realize that. Andrew absolutely steals the show in this movie, and from his very first scene, he's simply magnetic as Peter Parker. And just like in the TASM movies, he has great chemistry with his co-stars, and he delivers a really emotional performance. The thing I really liked about No Way Home was that there was a lot of great emotional moments, and funnily enough, Andrew Garfield was present in most of them. So let's ask the question, what has happened since TASM 2? Well, we get a bit of insight through the scene where Andrew and Toby meet Tom for the first time. Andrew's Peter explains that he still hasn't forgiven himself for the death of Gwen Stacy. Now, immediately in the theatre, I was relieved because I really wanted this addressed in the film, given the ending of TASM 2 being so depressing and unsatisfying for Peter's character. It seems that Andrew's Peter has become vengeful, and as he says, he stopped pulling his punches. Now, this is really interesting, and it makes me wonder what Andrew Spider-Man did to Rhino and Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin. Those are some questions that still remain unanswered. As I just briefly mentioned, the death of Gwen Stacy was a huge moment for Peter's character in TASM 2. And surprisingly, Andrew got a bit of a character arc in this film as he comes into the film jaded and vengeful, but is able to somewhat redeem himself by saving Zendaya's MJ. Now, the moment itself where he does save MJ wasn't as well done as in TASM 2, and that's just because No Way Home's CGI is pretty crap in this scene. Also, the scene is pretty quick. It doesn't last for very long. The slow-mo isn't as slow as it is in TASM 2, and the score is pretty lackluster, and the CGI is just a bit of a brown, muddy mess. However, there is one thing that shines in this scene, and that is Andrew's acting. Once he saves MJ, he asks if she's okay, and then once he realizes that he saved her, he starts to cry. And the depth of Andrew Garfield's performance here is just remarkable. We see how relieved he is to have caught MJ, but we also see the trauma he experiences by remembering the death of Gwen. And this is one of the best moments of the film, in my opinion, and funnily enough, it has absolutely nothing to do with the main plot. Some other dialogue bits that I loved throughout this film that involve Andrew Garfield is just the chemistry that he had with the other two Spider-Men. At one stage, Andrew says, "I love you guys," and the other Spider-Men sort of hesitate to say it back considering they've just met. And for a few seconds in the theatre, I thought this was a bit disrespectful to Andrew's character, almost as if like he was being made fun of in that instance. But upon reflection, I now think the opposite. In the TASM movies, Andrew's Peter sort of wears his heart on his sleeve, and he gives a very emotional sort of performance in both films. So it would make sense for him to sort of overextend himself in this situation and express how much he loves the other Spider-Man. And this also works as a great comedic moment as well, and Garfield sort of demonstrates that he is capable of both the emotional, impactful side of things, but then he's also very good at that comedic moment sort of stuff. But we know this from the TASM films, but now everyone else is sort of starting to realize that, which is great. I also love the exchange between Andrew and Jamie Foxx sort of towards the end. The first time Andrew's Spider-Man addresses Max, I felt like I was back in the theatre watching TASM 2. Andrew's Spider-Man voice hasn't changed a bit, and I still love it. It's fantastic. There's also a nice interaction at the end of the battle where Electro sort of says that he's back to being a nobody once he loses his powers, and then this obviously references the start of TASM 2 when Max Dillon is surprised Spider-Man knows his name because he believes that he's a nobody. Spider-Man then sort of, in TASM 2, gives Max a really uplifting speech, and it's one of my favourite moments in TASM 2. So it was great to see that little exchange in TASM 2 referenced in No Way Home. I'm also going to talk about the TASM 2 suit really quickly because the suit is back and it is glorious. In the shots where it's being practically filmed, it looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's one of the best live-action Spider-Man suits of all time, and unfortunately though, a lot of the times, and in weird situations as well, the suit was CGI'd, and it didn't look as good, and I could very easily tell when the suit was being CGI'd, and even the first time we see Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man when he first shows up, and he jumps through the portal, until he takes the mask off, the suit is CGI, And I'm just sort of wondering why that is. Like, why couldn't they just film that practically and have Andrew sort of like pretend to jump through a light hoop? It just doesn't make sense. And the MCU does this a lot. They just overuse CGI when it's perhaps not necessary. But we have to keep in mind these MCU movies are made very quickly. They're sort of, they make 4 or 5 movies a year. So these movies have to get out quickly. They have incredibly talented CGI artists, but I don't think they're given enough time to really polish their work here, which is shame, which is a real shame. And I wish some of the sets could have been, more practical, because it'll make this movie look better as the years go by. Because frankly, I think the TASM 2 movie's CGI looks better than this, which is quite sad. All right, let's touch on the music before we get into some sort of speculation and theories. So the music in this film, look, I'm not going to lie, I was really disappointed with the music in this film. I found the score in sort of Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home to be just dreadful, really, and just uninspired. And I was worried that would be the same here. And for the most part, it was. Electro's theme was only used for 2 seconds, and they didn't use the Spider-Man theme from TASM 2 at all. And that's just such a letdown, because I believe that Hans Zimmer TASM 2 score is one of the best comic book movie scores ever made. And we really needed that TASM 2 theme during the action scenes. We needed Electro's theme whenever he was on screen. And I think we also needed Peter and Gwen's theme when MJ was falling and Andrew was sort of diving to save her. We do get the TASM 1 theme, but again, it's only used for 10 seconds. And I gotta say, Michael Giacchino, it pains me to say this, but your score for this movie was just absolutely dreadful. And honestly, I think you should be ashamed of yourself, because this film is a film that is going to be watched for years and years and years by people of all ages. And it is an event film. It is a huge film. It's making so much money. People are absolutely loving it. And the score is just terrible. It's just terrible. I have no other way to say it. It's just terrible. I only really remember enjoying one song in particular, and that's when Doctor Strange was sort of casting that final spell. It's sort of a big epic song, but everything else was just such a letdown. And considering Michael Giacchino had access to the Raimi and the TASM themes, which are both incredible themes, it's just such a letdown and really disappointing. I really hope that they get somebody new to compose the future Spider-Man movies, because this was just bad and there's no excuses for it here. All right, so I want to address finally the love that Andrew Garfield is getting by the fans. And look, just imagine my surprise when I open up Twitter and I see that TASM3 or hashtag #MakeTASM3 is trending. People have started to realize that Andrew Garfield was a great Spider-Man, and all I can say is it's about time. Like, welcome to the party. You're a bit late. So, keeping in mind the money that this film is making and how much people have liked Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, do I think a TASM 3 is possible? The answer to that is yes, I do. Sony follows the money, and there's absolutely nothing stopping them from getting Andrew Garfield back as Spider-Man. So, this is what I want from you, Sony. I want a TASM 3 where Andrew's Spider-Man is still struggling to rebuild his life following the death of Gwen Stacy. I'd like to see Felicity Jones as Black Cat, as she played her in Spider-Man 2, or The Amazing Spider-Man 2, sorry. And I want her to be a bit of a flirtatious ally for Spider-Man, sort of as we see in the Spider-Man PS4 game. In terms of the villains Spider-Man should fight, I'd like to see maybe Tom Hardy's Venom, if Sony decides that they share the same universe, or maybe even Morbius. If Sony aren't up for either of those, I'd like to see a Spider-Man villain that we haven't seen in live action yet. I don't want to see another version of Vulture or another version of Sandman or something like that. I want to see something completely new. Now, that's sort of the dark and gritty way of making this film. However, I think it's entirely plausible given how much money this has made that Sony dives into the multiverse again. And if so, I only ask for one thing, and that is Spider-Gwen, played by Emma Stone. Let me know what you thought of Andrew Garfield's return in Spider-Man No Way Home in the comments below, and what would you like from The Amazing Spider-Man 3? Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. We'll have a podcast on No Way Home coming out soon. Bye for now.